So good evening, dear colleagues. Nice to see you all on this webinar. Today we have a webinar with American colleagues of the Louisville Free Public Library, Kentucky State. Let's greet them. Miss Valerie Viers, Director of Louisville Free Public Library. And Mr. Ahmed Farah, Program Coordinator of Immigrant Services at the Iroquois Library. And the next is speaker, Ms. Alicia Fuller-Wiesrow, Program Coordinator of Immigrant Services at the South Central Regional Library. It is a great honor for us to meet you all on this wonderful webinar. And today we will speak, thank you. And today we will speak about English language learning classes. And now, with a great pleasure, I give the floor to our speaker, Alicia.
Thank you. I will share my screen so that we can all see the presentation here. Okay. So thank you so much. Today we will share about the English language learning at Louisville Free Public Library. And Ahmed will start with introducing us.
Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Ahmed Farah. And my colleague Alicia Fuller. We're both program coordinators with the LFPL, Immigrant Services. We both are social workers. I like that. But today we'll be talking about some of our programming for immigrants and refugees in the city of Louisville, with a specific focus with our English language learning programs. Go ahead, Alicia.
Are we waiting for interpretation, or are we going in English?
No, let's go on because everybody speaks English. Thank you, Alicia.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, so let's start with, why do we provide English practice? This is such a good thing to keep in mind when we are doing programs at the library, is why should we do this? Why should we do this program? So that's why I want to start with this part of the conversation. Number one is that Louisville, our city, is home to refugees and immigrants from all over the world, and we love the diversity of our city. People need an opportunity to practice English in a casual way with people who speak English. It's very important to learn English in the classroom, but when we learn English in the classroom, it is often more formal than American spoken English, which is more casual. So that is a big reason why we offer English practice at the library. Plus, most refugees take ESL, English as a Second Language, classes for a few months after they arrive in the United States, but a few months is not enough to learn English if you don't know it. So it's important to have that place to practice English and learn, especially how Americans use English in speaking, because writing is more formal and speaking is more casual. So that's a big focus in our English programs. I want to say too that our programs are informal, right? They are casual. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but our programs they are intended to be extra practice. For students who are currently in ESL classes, or if they have been in ESL classes in the past, our programs are meant to be extra practice. So most of the students go to other ESL classes and they come to our classes and programs for extra practice. Both are important. It's important to learn English in the classroom, and it's important to practice English with people who speak English. Okay, so that's why. I mean, there's more reasons, but I think that these are good reasons for us to remember of why do we do this program and why does it matter to the community. Ahmed's going to share about English Conversation Club, one of our program models.
Yes, so English Conversation Club has been a program that's been going on for many years now. It started because of the need of learn English. And I think it was around the time when more immigrants, more refugees were resettling into Louisville. English Conversation Club is actually a program that I benefited from as a language learner myself when I was learning English. It has done significant stuff for me. It allowed me to practice my English, get more comfortable, practice new words. But essentially, ECC, as we call it, is an informal program where people learn English with a volunteer. So I am learning English. Alicia speaks English. She's a volunteer. We would sit together and then we would have a conversation. That's essentially what it is. It is free. It's once a week. And it is about an hour. Sometimes it might go a little over. And then, of course, there's the prep time. It is for all levels. That is one of the cool things about ECC.
I wonder if his internet had a problem. Looks like he's frozen, right?
Yeah, Ahmed. He's not here yet. Mr. Ahmed.
I got it. He said his computer was having a problem, so okay. So like he said, ECC, English Conversation Club, is for learners of all levels, and it provides individual attention because one English learner works with one volunteer. So it does have the individual attention, and that is how we have learners of all different levels. If you have a classroom, it would be hard to have learners of many different levels. But if you are doing the English Conversation Club model, which uses volunteers and English learners to work together, then there is an opportunity for learners of many different levels in the same room because everybody has their volunteer, right? I do want to emphasize that this is informal. This model is definitely different, right? There's in this model, English Conversation Club, there's no teacher. There's a facilitator from the library, but there's no teacher, there's no testing of what is your level, right? So it's individual conversation practice. We have beginners, we have more advanced students, everyone in between. So it really is all English learning levels and from all over the world because we have many refugees and immigrants here in our community. So often there will be people from all different countries. No one's from the same place. No one speaks the same languages other than learning English, right? So that is such a beautiful part of English Conversation Club is the diversity that we get to see with the participants and the volunteers.
I'm back. I'm on my phone.
Ahmed's back. He's on his phone. I talked a little bit about the diversity of the group and the model, but you can start with participants not needing to register.
Yes, thank you for covering me.
No problem.
Yeah, participants do not need to register. It's the same with volunteers, but we'll talk about it in a second. There's no registration needed. If you go to a class and then miss the next class, it's not going to be something that is going to affect you negatively. So it's going to be okay if you come for 2 weeks and then not come for the next 2 weeks. Of course, we provide a lot of materials for language learning. Valerie can probably talk a little bit more about it. She's the one that gets those material for us. And it's for different levels. And we also have a lot of different things online. You can go to the next slide for me. Yes, volunteer language recruiting. The participants, the language learners, it's easier to recruit. We have a lot of connections with community partners that serve this population. Volunteers, that's usually the more difficult one, but we typically work with high schools, universities. They bring their students would come in. That's typically most of our volunteers are students from high school or college. Let's see. Former teachers, that's an interesting one. That's one that I like because they bring in their own experiences, teaching experience. But yeah, the volunteers did not receive any formal training. Of course, we talked to them about some of the guidelines that we have at the library and making sure that, of course, nobody gets hurt, especially our language learners. Because of the diversity, of Alicia said, there are things that we try to avoid, things like religion. In Kazakhstan, I believe Alicia and I were talking, it's mostly Muslim, but they might have other religions. In the United States, it's a variety of different languages, a variety of different religions and beliefs. And so we try to avoid those things because things might happen where there's going to be conflict. So we would avoid controversial stuff like that. I'm looking on my phone, trying to see if I missed anything. But it looks good.
I think you got it. Okay, so English Conversation Club is the program model that the library has used for many years. Of course, things changed with the COVID-19 pandemic. We didn't offer any programming in person for a long time. So when that started, we stopped English Conversation Club in person. Since then, we have started again. We have 3 locations that offer English Conversation Club right now, so that is exciting. In our city, we have 17 libraries, but 3 of them offer English Conversation Club. Okay, let's talk about our other model. Oh, you want to talk about partnerships, Ahmed, or you want me to do it?
I can do it.
Okay.
So partnerships, that's a big one. Collaboration is a significant aspect of ECC, especially when we're thinking about volunteers. So the person previous to me, and even with Alicia, they've had to do a lot of, had a lot of connections with different schools, with different colleges, to have that relationship with maybe the instructors or the professors of those schools, to get their students to come to volunteers. And a lot of times it's they incentivize the students by providing them with extra credit to attend our ECC classes. But we also partner with different community partners, as well as churches, mosques, synagogues. Wherever we need to be to get volunteers, we would go there. And one of the things that we work on is maybe even more diverse volunteers, because we have diverse students. Diverse volunteers would be beneficial for that as well.
So English Conversation Club is one model that we have, but we also have another model, and that is English Conversation Practice. So the first one, English Conversation Club, ECC. This one is English Conversation Practice, ECP. Americans love abbreviations. But English Conversation Practice is a conversation class taught by a library employee. Just like English Conversation Club, English Conversation Practice meets once a week for 1 hour. It's a free program. All of our programs are free. This class focuses on casual spoken English. Like I mentioned earlier, many students who attend ESL classes have learned English that's a little bit more formal, and American English is more casual when we're speaking. So it's important to have that place for people to practice. For this, it is best to keep the class small with 12 to 15 students, just so that everyone has an opportunity to participate, and the class does have a focus on participation. So we want the students to participate in the class, to raise their hand, to give examples, so that they can receive individual attention. But of course, they do receive less individual attention than English Conversation Club, which is 1 learner, 1 volunteer, right? That's very individual. English Conversation Practice has 1 facilitator and, again, 12 to 15 students. Students with this model, students can be at different English levels, but the teacher has to provide activities and instruction that meet the needs of the majority of the class. It would be challenging to have a beginner and an advanced student. So what most often happens is many students who are intermediate, kind of different levels of intermediate, and maybe there are some that are more advanced, and we can have a conversation to say, oh, here's an example for intermediate speakers. To make it more advanced, we could say this, right? There is a way to increase the level of the conversation for the students who are advanced. If there were beginners in the same class, I think it would be challenging, just being realistic. But we do allow students to try the class. My theory is that if it's too hard or if it's too easy, they won't come back, right? If it is a level that is appropriate for them, if they are gaining information from being in the class, they will return, right? They will keep giving their time to practice if it is something that is valuable for them. we do ask students to register for this class. They usually need to email the library staff member to sign up, or we can have them call the local library, and we can help them from there. But this is a model that has mostly been online. And so we're going to talk about that, because that's definitely one way that we have consistently used technology with this type of programming. So let's talk about what it looks like online. We do offer this opportunity in person, but it has been online for 2 years now. So we'll talk a little bit more about online in just a second, but I want you all to see like what is the structure of the class, like what does it look like? During class, we share a PowerPoint just like this on Zoom with the curriculum, and we usually follow this model for topics. We have a brief topic introduction. Remember, all of the students are in ESL classes, or they have been in ESL classes in the past. So it's not such an in-depth level of teaching like it would be in an ESL class. So because of that, we're able to have more flexibility and not spend so long teaching the topic, not spend so long introducing it. That's why I said topic introduction, because it really is kind of, there might be some teaching, but for many students, it's a reminder, and it's not a long lesson teaching them exactly something specific in English. So after that, we do examples from me, the instructor, and then we do examples from the class. So the class participation is very important in this model. The students will give me topics that they want to practice. This class is for them. I speak English, right? The class is for the students who are learning English and who need that safe and welcoming space to practice. So I always keep that in mind when I'm doing this program. There are often diversions from the curriculum, which I welcome because they are the ones who need that place to ask questions and seek clarification and practice. So I always welcome conversation, questions, cultural questions, grammar question, everything from the students. They can ask questions anytime. So for this model, getting through the curriculum is less important, and having the safe place for the students is more important. So that is a shift for some people, right? That's not how it's done everywhere. But in this model, I find that it has worked really well to allow the students to provide guidance for the class of what topics they want to hear, and what they need more practice with. There are topics that I know that every level English learner could use more practice with. And so I always have a curriculum prepared, but I have the flexibility for the students to ask questions and provide other topic suggestions of things that they want to practice. So that is like kind of my theory of how this English conversation practice program works. But I think that it is really important to hold on to that for this model to be successful. The students, when they give a topic that they want to practice, and then I create a lesson, they gain something that they needed, right? And that helps them increase their commitment to the classes. It helps them continue coming back, okay? So for the online English conversation practice, the class is recorded on Zoom, just like right now, and it is posted privately on YouTube. So you can't search it, but I do send the link after class to the students. And so they can review the YouTube recording with me teaching, with other students giving examples. They can review the PowerPoint slides, right? They have that information after class to continue studying, to watch it again, to go back to a certain part of the lesson if they want clarification. And I know there are some students who have attended class in the past who can't attend right now based on their schedule. but they watch the videos. So there is a continued way to reach people even outside of the regular time of the program. Some examples of topics, like I said, we often use topics that are relevant to English learners of all levels. Some topics will be prepositions, phrasal verbs, idioms, verbs with multiple uses, the perfect tenses in English. Those are pretty hard. We just recently talked about all of those. So again, these are things that are relevant to everyone who's learning English, and you can make it a little bit lower level, you can make it intermediate, or you can make it more advanced. Well, idioms and phrasal verbs are pretty advanced, right? But the other ones, you can kind of change the level of instruction to meet the needs of the students in the class at that time. But just like English Conversation Club, English Conversation Practice is still a very informal program. I have the curriculum prepared that I create every class, but I do want to emphasize that it's informal. There's no like testing that we do. The library here just isn't really set up to do that kind of thing. When students are in ESL classes here in Louisville, they do have a test and they do enter the level matching their test results. But for the library, the only way that I can assess someone is really just a verbal conversation. How confident are they? Are they making mistakes? Is it easy? Is it hard for them? You know, it's a very informal assessment. So that's part of why our classes as well are informal. So I mentioned that English Conversation Practice has been online for almost 2 years. That was from the pandemic. We began offering it via Zoom, and I love offering the class on Zoom because it helps students have access to the program. Many students have issues with transportation. Maybe they don't have a license here, they don't have a car, they don't have a way to get to the library if we were meeting in person. Most of my students have to care for their young children, right? And so the library doesn't provide childcare during this, but if someone is in their own home on Zoom, they can watch their children and be in English class, right? So many of the participants are mothers, and offering class on Zoom really allows them to address the barriers to participation, transportation, childcare being the biggest barriers. So I will continue offering the class on Zoom as long as I can, because I think it's really important to provide that access. I mean, the library is about accessing information. This really meets our goal in that way, in my opinion. One thing is that a lot of students are using their cell phone to participate on Zoom. So I have to make sure that my words on my PowerPoint are large enough. I have to make sure that everything could be visible on a smaller screen, because most students are not using a computer. I think most are using their cell phone. So that's a benefit because a computer isn't required. Most people have smartphones, right? But there are times where some people don't have a strong enough connection to really participate. So that does happen. But generally, people are on their phone and they're able to participate from anywhere. So that's really, I feel like that's a big innovation with this program, is allowing people to participate from wherever they are. Should we do any questions about the models before we continue, or should we just keep going?
If you'd like, I can say something real quick about the materials we purchase, because you all were interested in purchasing and such. So the library does have an English language learning line item in its budget. I'm the selector for that. So I go in and I look at what each library has. We have 17 branches in our system, and I purchase things, replace things every year because they're very popular. So we have English language learning books at all levels, and then we have specialty books like business English, adapting the American accent. And sometimes we have books for specific speakers of specific languages such as Spanish and Arabic. Those are two languages that we have a lot of speakers of those languages in our city. And recently, in the past few years, we've gotten downloadable audiobooks, which has been super helpful. Of course, when you have a downloadable audiobook, you can listen and practice your listening skills, repeat the words, and get used to the pronunciation. So those are wonderful. Another thing that we purchase for English language learners are games and learning materials for English Conversation Club. As Alicia mentioned, English Conversation Club is our program where English language learners, often they're new to the United States, come together with Americans who speak English, and they learn from each other, right? They have conversations one-on-one. So what we do in English Conversation Club to facilitate that is purchase games and other learning materials. It's sometimes challenging to sit down with a stranger and talk if you don't know them at all. So if you have a game to work on together or something fun to do, it can help with that. And we do have a small library budget for those types of things to purchase every year. We also have a donor in town, at least one donor, actually there's several, who give us money to purchase these, to support English Conversation Club because they love what the program does for our citizens. And that's really wonderful. Often, in addition to the games, we'll purchase food for English Conversation Club, because that also that encourages participation and facilitates conversation as well.
Thank you so much, Miss Valerie. Miss Valerie, as you know, she's the director of public library in Louisville. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Valerie. Let's talk a little bit more about the partnerships and how we recruit English learners for our classes. Every day at the library, I would say every day, people come into the library and they are immigrants, refugees, they are looking for English practice, they're looking for English classes. So we will give them information about ESL classes in our area, but we will also give them information about our opportunities, our programs at the libraries here for English practice. The public schools here offer adult ESL classes, and they are our biggest partner. We definitely rely on doing outreach, going there to the classes, telling the students about the opportunities that we offer at the library, and making library cards and telling them about library services. So that is a very important outreach that we do. That's a very important partnership between the library and the adult ESL classes in our area. The majority of the classes here are facilitated by the public schools. The classes for adults are facilitated by the public schools, but there are also some other classes that can be harder to find, but we do our best in trying to know about all the classes so we can tell people about the opportunities, and we can connect with them so that they learn about our services and our programs. The adult ESL classes here and the refugee resettlement agencies, like those are definitely the biggest opportunities that we have to meet with people directly and tell them about our programs and services. The local refugee resettlement agencies, they have ESL classes as well. So those students usually have not been in the United States for very long. It's usually 3 months or less. So many of them are more beginner level. But there are multiple levels. So it just depends. But those two groups, the public schools for the adult ESL classes and the refugee resettlement agencies, those two groups are probably our most important partnerships in terms of recruiting English learners for any of our programs. Students can generally choose what which one they want to go to, right? Like I mentioned earlier, we have 3 options in person for English Conversation Club, different days of the week, different locations. And for English Conversation Practice, we have 2 days online and then 1 day in person. So 6 total opportunities every week for around the city for English learners to practice with the library. And we are proud of that. I mean, it was not quite that many locations before the pandemic, but then there was a couple years where we just had to rebuild it and we were doing the online classes. So, I mean, I'm definitely proud of the fact that we have rebuilt this program since the pandemic began. Every few months, we go to these classes, we tell the students about our English learning programs, about library services, make library cards. So, it is an important way that we recruit students. The class schedule, the locations, everything is on the website for the library and it's on printed calendars. So it is public information. There are other ways that students can find out. But in the United States, I have learned that it's very important to go to the places where English learners are to share this information with them and to recruit them to come to our classes. It often takes an invitation more than once, and just someone seeing a face and making that personal connection with someone is the best way to be successful with getting students to come to our classes and our programs. So Ahmed or Valerie, anything you guys want to add about that?
Just to reiterate that it's so important for us to build those partnerships with places that host refugees. We have a couple of, as Alicia said, we have a couple of agencies in town who when refugees move here, they help them get settled, and introducing them to the library during that process has helped us, create some lifelong users of the library. So yeah, those partnerships are very important. Also, I think we have some. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing, and that is with the core classes we have at the library, they are not classes that you should take without taking ESL classes. They are supplemental. We always recommend that you take your ESL classes, and then you would use our classes to help with your learning in addition to those ESL classes. But yeah, Valerie, I think you were going to say the same thing about there's some questions on the chat, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. And the first couple might need some translation for us. I don't know if those are questions. Someone asks, I understand the informal form of classes, but do you still have any kind of monitoring just to see who were your constant users and what progress they made?
For English Conversation Practice, there isn't any kind of testing. I know it would be good, but the library is just not really set up here to do any kind of testing. But I see students make progress, so that's always rewarding. And often students will tell me about interactions they had where they used something that we learned. And I love that too, because the whole point is for them to feel comfortable using American English casually in the real world. So when they share stories with me about their successes doing that, or when they ask questions about something that they heard, and just clarifying understanding, it's always really rewarding to see the progress that they make. There's no formal testing, no, but I do know the students that come to the class online and in person. So I'm tracking who is attending as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think even Alicia, Muhammad, for instance, we see the progress that the students are making, where maybe that now they're a little more comfortable talking, or maybe they're not as concerned about making mistakes. And when we're having a conversation, there's not as many pauses maybe, or maybe there's not as many or ahs when they're having a conversation. So we definitely see progress, we can tell, but it's not full.
There's a couple other questions. The English course is not only for refugees, immigrants, and people seeking asylum are also welcome in the classes. I mean, anybody learning English in the United States, they're usually going to be in one of those categories, but anybody learning English is welcome to be in the classes. It is just pretty common for us to work with the classes where refugees are going, the ESL classes, but we definitely have non-refugee, like immigrant students in the classes and in the conversation club. The question about participating in them freely, what does that mean?
Is it for free, your language courses?
Oh, everything's free. Yeah, everything's free.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Valerie, just I would like to translate what Timur, our American Corner coordinator, he has written in the chat, that dear friends, so we hope you hear us quietly, and just now we are recording our webinar online, and then after that we will post on YouTube channel on Pushkin Library, and then if participants have a question, they may ask and raise a hand. Yeah, they may ask personally you or write in the chat. Do we have this possibility to ask you? Yeah, just the questions. Dear colleagues, please open your microphones or raise your hand, and you may ask questions to our great speakers. Thank you. I'm sorry, the last question they have written. May we send, Valerie, this presentation to our participants? They're asking in the chat.
Oh, the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can do that, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And if
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Is the opportunity to participate if we're not in the USA, but probably we're at Kazakhstan and have the online session with you, but we don't have an opportunity to come in to see you, but just only have the online sessions with you. Is this possible?
Yes. In the past, I have had students I had a student who was in Russia, who participated online. I had a student who was in Argentina. So yes, you all would be welcome. However, it would be kind of late for you. I don't think it would be, like midnight for you. So that's very late, because for us, it is 2 p.m. our time. So for you, I think that is midnight. So that would be very late, but anyone is welcome. I can also, like I said, I have the videos on YouTube, so I can also send you all some links to just see how the class works and see like what the structure is, and how I handle it when a student makes a suggestion of a topic, or how I handle it if they ask a question that is very different than what we're talking about, which is welcome, but it is a way to handle it in the classroom online. So we can share that as well after the presentation.
I believe somebody said midnight was okay.
Midnight's okay. Okay. For me, I am asleep at midnight. Okay.
But it's good opportunity. Yeah, it's worse not to sleep one night, but it's okay, I think. Yeah.
But there is my email. You all could send me an email if you want the links for our class on Zoom. And we meet Mondays and Wednesdays, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time in the US.
Thank you, Alicia. We have some questions here in the chat. How to register in your course?
Send me an email.
And there's the next question. What are the most common topics you choose for speaking? Zairagul and Janat have some questions.
Yes.
Could you send timetable? Okay.
So my email and the timetable are in the chat. The most common topics, I mean, that depends on who is in the class. If the class is more intermediate, then I need to choose a topic that's appropriate for them, right? If the class has some more advanced learners in it, then I need to choose a topic that is appropriate for them. Like I said earlier, when we have multiple levels in one class, the teacher does have to teach to the middle of the class as much as we can. That can be hard. I have had more beginner level students in the class, and I think this must be very hard for them, but they keep coming back. So it is their decision to use the time that we have together. Kentucky is the state. There's a question in the chat. In terms of topics, I shared a little bit earlier about some of the topics. Prepositions. Prepositions is a good topic for everyone. Even advanced learners can make mistakes with prepositions because prepositions in English can be crazy. So that is such a good topic. Let's see, verbs with multiple uses. Like in English, the verb to do has a lot of different uses. The verb to make has a lot of different uses. To go, go really has a lot of different uses. So those are some examples of some verbs that we can talk about. And if you remember, I give an introduction to the topic, and then I give examples, and then the students give examples and ask questions. So we really do have a culture in the class of openness for the students to ask questions and to guide what they want to learn in the classroom.
Thank you, Alicia. And we have a question from Janat. Can you send a link to register to our classes beforehand? Maybe we will send later, yeah, after the meeting we can share the link. Yeah, it's for free, yeah. Жаната, добрый вечер. Вы можете также лично спросить вот спикеров наших и задать вопрос сами лично, дорогие наши участники. Ну, я продублирую у Валерии и Алиши, возьму ссылочку и вам отправлю обязательно. Thank you. I explained that. I will share the link.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Dear teachers, you may open your microphones and you may ask personally our great speakers.
Could I say some words? It's not question. Hi, guys. I want to just say some respect words to our organization Mulder and Americanskome and other lecturers like Valeria, Alicia, and Ahmed. Thank you so much. I was so happy that I meet with you with Zoom. Now I'm in Almaty. Almaty is in Kazakhstan, like a second capital city, if you know, near the mountain. And I want to say you big hello and thank you for this lecture, and I want to really take appreciate with you this free speaking class. Exactly, I will try it. Thank you so much.
Okay, yes, you are welcome.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions, dear teachers? It's a very useful webinar. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, really, it's awesome. We have a question. Just a minute. We have a question. Just now we are typing. How to get people interested in volunteering, especially in the case of teachers? How to get teachers interested in volunteering?
It can be hard. I don't want to lie to you and say, oh, it's so easy. It isn't easy. I mean, recruiting volunteers can be a challenging part of the program. That's why Ahmed mentioned earlier was explaining that it's important for us to partner with students because the teachers can make the students volunteer, right? The teachers can give extra credit or they can require the students to volunteer. So it's important for us to have relationships with teachers. Most teachers that I have seen volunteer are students who are learning to be teachers, right? They have experience teaching in the classroom, but they're student teachers, right? They're not necessarily running their own classroom yet. They will in the future, but they're still learning. So that is a big group that I have seen volunteer. And then another group I have seen for teachers are retired teachers. Teachers who don't teach every day anymore, who maybe have more inspiration to volunteer with us once a week, you know. So those are the most common ones. It's not that common, I don't think, for current teachers in the classroom every day to also volunteer. And I understand, but recruiting volunteers can be a challenging part. But when the program happens with English learners and volunteers connecting and having conversation, it is beautiful. It is really just a beautiful thing. So you can't be discouraged with the volunteers. But if one reason in the United States that we have had such success with student volunteers is because students often are required to complete volunteer hours for their school or for a group, like some kind of club that they're in with school, for their church. So that is one reason that it's been so successful with students. With adults who have their own lives and are not students, it can be a little bit harder to get them to volunteer. But I think that when people see how the program works, they often feel inspired to help and inspired to come back and give only 1 hour of their time in a week to do this work that really makes a difference for the people who are learning English.
If I could add one more thing to that.
Please.
It'll be the benefit of attending for the volunteers. There's this, Alicia and I talk about this all the time. There's a culture exchange that happens where I'm learning about your culture when I'm volunteering with somebody. Let's say I am from Somalia, Alicia is from the US, she's volunteering with me. She's going to be learning, I'm going to be learning English because of her, but she's also going to be learning about my culture, about my maybe food or music. So it's going to be new things that they're also getting something from. So it's a benefit to both the volunteers and the students. And that's usually the things that typically get people to volunteer, because they will get something out of it. It's not like you're giving me an hour, you don't benefit from it, but you do benefit from it, obviously.
Valerie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, just to Ahmed's point, as soon as you can get a volunteer into the English Conversation Club just once, they tend to love it and they want to come back. So it's the biggest hurdle, I think, is like getting them to come once, but
Yes.
once they're in there, they're going to love it. And that cultural exchange that Ahmed was just speaking of is so important, and both parties benefit. So the newcomer to the United States will get a chance to talk to an American who's lived here maybe their whole lives and learn, when you go to a different culture, just interacting with people is just a little bit different. So they get to learn how Americans interact with each other. And for the Americans, if I go to English Conversation Club on a Saturday afternoon and I meet someone from Somalia or Cuba, it's like I got to travel the world that day and just in my hometown, and it's just wonderful. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Alicia, Valerie, Ahmed. We have a question from Ayman Jamankulova. Thanks for answering my question on monitoring. Another question is about your programs. Do you create them yourself or use the ready ones?
I did share in the
Yeah.
chat the answer, but I can speak a little bit to it. I create the curriculum for the English Conversation Practice. English Conversation Club doesn't use a curriculum because it's just the one-on-one conversation. Like we mentioned, we provide conversation questions, we provide bilingual dictionaries, worksheets, games, maps, all kinds of things for people to use during the program. But for English Conversation Practice, I'm a teacher, we don't use volunteers. So I create a curriculum with the flexibility for the students to ask questions at any time and for us to go away from the curriculum at any time during the class. I use some online resources, but some English learning resources online are not good. Some are good, but you have to be careful, right? So a good source is using English language learning books from our collection and seeing the lessons that are prepared there and how can I use this to put this into my class and use it with the students. So I always want the class to be participatory. I want the students to raise their hand and participate in the class and give examples. So when I create the curriculum, it's not a lecture, right? It's a way that the students, I provide information, but there's always a way for the students to participate, give examples, ask questions, and receive my feedback about the examples that they provide. Maybe they made a small mistake, we talk about it, we correct it, we move on to the next student, right? So they do still receive the individual attention, even in the classroom setting.
One thing I would add, and I think Alicia, you touched on this, is the students sometimes can pick whatever they want to talk about. So let's say you typically should always have something ready in case the students don't have anything. But if the students have a topic that they want to discuss, which is not all the time maybe, but it's consistent enough for you to utilize that. But if they come up with something, you obviously would address that. But you always have something just in case the students don't have any.
Thank you so much, Alicia, Ahmed. And we have some questions to you. Thank you so much for a brilliant presentation. All great speakers. We have some questions. What does the first level of education imply? How many levels does it imply? And what level do they strive to reach? How levels are determined?
So we typically don't have like specific level things. We might have a class like ECP might be for beginners. It could be for intermediates. It could be for advanced speakers. With ECC, English Conversation Club, of course, all levels are going to be welcome. How do we know what level the students are? I would say it's based on a conversation we have with them. We see how they talk and maybe what we can work on. And they also, a lot of the students are attending ESF classes, formal ESF classes. And in those classes, they do testing to assess their level. And then they go into a course based on that level. So that's how we typically find out that there's not a formal way for us. If you want to add anything that we should, okay?
We know that that is non-traditional. We think that it is okay in this case because most students in our classes are using our classes as extra practice. It's not the only English practice that they do. So because of this, we think that it's more okay to not have a formal level of testing. But we do recognize that it's non-traditional. But we are extra practice. We're not the only English practice that our students are receiving.
The goal is essentially so you go to an ESL class, you learn things, and then you have to practice those things. So if I want to run a marathon, I have to practice for that marathon. And so I would learn about what a marathon is. I would learn about what running is, and then I would have to actually go run. It's the same with the ESL classes. You would go to ESL classes, learn formal English, and then you come to our programs, ECP, ECC, to practice those things informally. Because when you speak English in the United States anyways, it's not formal, it's informal English, and so that's what we're focusing on.
Thank you so much. We have the next question. How many hours does the course last?
It's free and it's 1 hour.
1 hour per week.
Yeah, per week.
Great. Per week.
So
Cool.
that's part of why it's an extra practice, because it's 1 hour a week. You all know is not enough time to learn a language. But like I mentioned before, because we do offer 6 opportunities per week, someone could go to more than one, right? I have students that attend my class online and they attend other groups in person. They attend Ahmed's program, English Conversation Club. So some students definitely attend more than one class, but each class is meant to stand alone. You don't have to go to the class this week, go to class that week, go to class the next week, right? Each class is meant to be independent. Many students attend class every week, but the goal is for it to be okay if we have a new student that comes into the class. They don't have any problem if they weren't here last week. They don't have a problem if they missed a week. So that is also unique with our English language learning opportunities that we have. The classes, I want to clarify, the classes keep going. Like it's not 6 weeks or 2 months or 3 months. Like the classes keep going. My online class has been going for 2 years. English Conversation Clubs in person have, so the classes continue and students continue attending or they don't.
Yeah, with ECC, it's the same thing I would say. But so for instance, in July and August, I won't have ECC. I'm going to be focusing only on volunteers. I want to get enough volunteers to be able to meet the needs of the students that are coming to the program. So you might take a break or two in the year, but for the most part, it should be like something that's consistent, because consistency is good for the students, and that's what they want.
Thank you so much. How librarians or use or some resources, library funds in teaching?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about the books that we purchase consistently. You know, we purchase lots of English language learning books over the course of the year, and of course we do have some funds to purchase, like I said, games and other learning materials for ECC. Did you want to say something, Ahmed?
Oh no, I think it was going to be just that. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So those. Yeah. Was there another question after?
Sorry. Yeah. Are professional librarians involved in the learning process?
So
do you track?
Yeah, we now have some librarians that are they LA's, Alicia? Some of the ones that are doing PCs. So library assistants is what they are. That's their position. But we do have some library assistants who are facilitating these programs, like ECC, for instance.
Thank you. And how are the library funds used? You said, yeah, Ms. Valerie. And to consolidate the material independently, do you have online or offline video recordings in support?
Yeah, my English conversation practice on Zoom, those are recorded every time and they're put on YouTube every time. So the students, I send them the link to YouTube and they can watch it later if they want to review, if they missed class, or they want more practice.
Thank you so much. And the last question, how library resources are involved in the organization of interactive activities for participants in teaching?
Yeah, I use materials, I use books from our English language learning collection, and I will often use some of the activities that are in the books to be part of my lessons for English conversation practice. We also can use books from our collection at English Conversation Club. Sometimes the focus is conversation, but sometimes you have a student or a volunteer or both who want to do some kind of activity together, right? And so they can do activities about grammar, about vocabulary, pronunciation, all of those things that go into learning a language, reading comprehension. So many things go into learning a language. So volunteers and participants, English learners, can do activities from our books together. We have a lot of materials, books that are specific for English Conversation Club. So they are non-circulating. They are always available for English Conversation Club. But then, of course, we have thousands of books that are also circulating that participants can check out at any time for extra practice.
Yeah, with ECC, I would add, along with what Alicia said, of course, dictionaries, we use that. I use Oxford's picture dictionary. It is typically bilingual, so you might have it in English and Spanish. So if I have a language learner who speaks Spanish and they are a beginner, we might bring out the Oxford picture dictionary that is English-Spanish for them to use during that conversation.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much. And we have the last question from our teachers. Maybe you can share some of your favorite activities and strategies you use on practice. Could you share?
The biggest activity is for the students to give their own examples, their own example sentences. So they give it to me when we're online. I type it. The whole class sees what their example is. Sometimes, this is interesting, sometimes students in the class will correct other students. I only allow that when I know that we are a more trusted group, right? Because usually you just want to be careful, but usually I am the one to correct a student if there was any mistakes in their example. But it's really important for them to provide examples for the class because there are so many reasons why. They learn from each other, right? Some student will say, oh, I know there's a mistake in that sentence and I know how I could correct it, or that doesn't sound right, but I don't know how to correct it, right? They learn from each other. They practice hearing each other. Like I mentioned earlier, the students are all from different places and all speak different languages. other than English, right? English is the only common language that we all have, and they're still learning. But it's important for them to receive that feedback from me, the instructor, because it's easy to make a small mistake in English, but a small mistake can be an important mistake. And so that's part of why it's so important to give them that individual feedback, even when we're in the classroom setting. Of course, there are some students that are quiet. There are some students that don't participate verbally that much. Some students will type their examples in the chat on Zoom, and that's fine. There's a lot of different ways that the students will participate in the class, whether it's verbally or in the chat or just kind of watching. Some students don't participate that much online, so it's interesting, but providing the feedback verbally, I think, is really important when they give examples, to help them understand what sounds more natural to Americans. Some students are more familiar with British English, which has important differences with American English. So that's one thing that comes up a lot in the classes. And I have to say, it's right, but it's not exactly American English. Let's think of how we can say it that would sound more natural to Americans. So I mean, it's kind of hard to play games on Zoom like we would if we were in a classroom. Of course, I think games are always a good way to engage with the students, but on Zoom, it's a little bit harder. So if there was an activity that I wish we could do more, I would say I wish we could play games more, but it just doesn't really work on Zoom as well. So anything to add, Ahmed or Valerie?
Good to me.
Good.
Thank you so much. Dear teachers, do you have any questions, Altınay? You wanted to ask? No? Okay. I think all questions, suggestions, have been voiced. Then we complete our meeting today. I think it was extremely useful for all participants. And we will try to save a record of our webinar to post on YouTube. Links will be sent to all participants. And so, dear colleagues, thank you all for participating in the webinar. Goodbye. See you all. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful to you for a brilliant webinar. Thank you.
Oh, it was
Alicia.
wonderful.
Yeah, Valerie and Ahmed. Пока-пока. Bye.
We will follow up, okay?
Yeah, that's true. Right, you're back. Thank you.
Thank you for. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Thank
a nice
you.
day.
You
Thank
too.
you.